Palestine has a complex history as a cultural and political crossroads due to its location at the intersection of three continents. Early human settlements date back to prehistoric times, and during the Bronze and Iron Ages, the region saw the rise of Canaanite city-states, Israelite kingdoms, and Philistine territories. Over time, it came under the rule of major empires, including the Assyrians, Babylonians, and Persians, with each period leaving significant cultural and political legacies. During the Hellenistic and Roman periods, Palestine was influenced by Greek culture and later became a key center for Christianity after the Roman Empire adopted the faith. It saw the rule of various Islamic dynasties following the Muslim conquests of the 7th century, including the Umayyads, Abbasids, and Fatimids. The region was also contested during the Crusades, changing hands between Crusader and Muslim rulers until the Ottoman Empire unified it in the 16th century, maintaining control until the early 20th century. The British captured Palestine during World War I and established a mandate, which saw rising tensions between Jewish and Arab communities. After the UN proposed a partition plan, the State of Israel was declared in 1948, leading to the First Arab-Israeli War. Israel expanded its territory beyond the UN-proposed borders, and many Palestinians were displaced, an event known as the Nakba. Conflicts continued, with Israel occupying the West Bank and Gaza Strip after the Six-Day War in 1967, further complicating the region's dynamics. Efforts for peace emerged with the Oslo Accords in 1993, creating the Palestinian Authority, PA, to govern parts of the West Bank and Gaza. However, continued conflicts, especially between Israel and Hamas, have hindered the peace process. The PA controls parts of the West Bank, while Hamas governs Gaza, reflecting the ongoing political and territorial divides. Throughout its history, Palestine has been influenced by various powers, religions, and cultures, resulting in a rich and diverse heritage. Despite numerous attempts at peace, the region remains marked by conflict and geopolitical struggles, with continued international efforts to find a resolution. Palestine's history under Persian rule saw the region as a strategic crossroads for trade, with control shared among various local powers. The Persians facilitated trade by granting parts of the coastal plain and Upper Galilee to the Phoenician cities, while Arabian tribes managed routes through the Negev. Greek influence began to grow, visible through trade, pottery, and coinage, setting the stage for future Hellenization. The brief resurgence of Egyptian control in the 4th century BCE was short-lived as Persia regained dominance, and Aramaic became the region's common language, with Hebrew continuing in Judah's religious contexts. The Hellenistic period began with Alexander the Great's conquest in 333 BCE, leading to alternating control between the Ptolemies and Seleucids. The Seleucids' imposition of unpopular policies spurred the Maccabean Revolt, which established the independent Hasmonean dynasty. This Jewish state expanded its territory but eventually succumbed to internal conflicts and external pressures, particularly from Rome. In 63 BCE, Roman general Pompey intervened in a Hasmonean succession dispute, effectively making Judea a Roman client state. Roman influence grew, and Herod the Great, installed by Rome, transformed the region through extensive building projects, including the reconstruction of the Second Temple. Roman rule led to significant upheaval, particularly through the First Jewish-Roman War, 66-70 CE, and the Bar Kokhba Revolt, 132-135 CE, both of which were brutally suppressed, resulting in massive casualties and the near-total desolation of Judea. After the Bar Kokhba Revolt, the region was renamed Syria Palestina, and Jerusalem was re-established as Aelia Capitolina, with a ban on Jews. Over time, local cities were rebuilt, and the region saw the integration of various ethnic and cultural groups, including Greeks, Romans, Arabs, and Nabateans, each contributing to its diverse social fabric. Christianity's rise in the 4th century dramatically altered Palestine's landscape, turning it into a center of pilgrimage and religious authority within the Roman Empire. Emperor Constantine's support for Christianity led to the construction of churches at key religious sites and the spread of monasticism. Palestine became an intellectual hub, surpassing traditional centers like Alexandria, and Jerusalem was elevated to a patriarchate, marking its importance within the Christian world. Urbanization and economic growth flourished during the Byzantine era, fostering a period of cultural prosperity that left a lasting legacy. During the Byzantine period, administrative reforms created smaller provinces, enhancing governance and stability. The Ghassanid Arabs, as Byzantine allies, helped secure the region, while the annexation of the Nabatean kingdom expanded Roman control. However, tensions remained, exemplified by a series of Samaritan revolts driven by religious discrimination, which were violently suppressed. These uprisings and subsequent policies diminished the non-Christian population, reinforcing Christian dominance until the Muslim conquests in the 7th century. In 602, the Byzantine Empire faced a final war with the Persian Sasanian Empire. The Persians invaded the Levant in 613, prompting a Jewish revolt against the Byzantines, aiming for autonomy in Jerusalem. By 614, a combined Persian-Jewish force captured Caesarea and Jerusalem, leading to the destruction of churches, the massacre of Christians, and the capture of relics, including the True Cross. The Byzantine Emperor Heraclius launched a counter-offensive, and by 627 he had regained much of the lost territory. In 629, Heraclius triumphantly returned the True Cross to Jerusalem, but despite promises of pardon, many Jews were expelled and executed for their earlier role in the uprising. The exhaustion of continued warfare contributed to the ease of the subsequent Muslim conquest a decade later. Between 636 and 640, the armies of Caliph Umar captured Palestine. Under Islamic rule, Christians, Jews, and Samaritans, recognized as people of the Book, were allowed to practice their religions freely. The Muslims also lifted the long-standing Roman ban on Jews residing in Jerusalem. The Islamic administration divided the territory into military districts, Ajnad, with Jund Falastin, based in Ramla, and Jund al-Urdun, centered in Tiberias, covering various regions. Palestine thrived as a strategic trade hub and agricultural center, producing goods like spices, olive oil, sugar, silk, and Jewish glass. Efforts were made to develop coastal cities, fortify ports, and build shipyards, with Acre becoming the primary naval base. Though Palestine was under Muslim control, Christian interest in the Holy Land remained strong, with many European kings supporting holy sites and facilitating pilgrimages. Pilgrimage was seen as a spiritual journey, but safety concerns from bandit attacks were cited as justification for the Crusades. The Islamic Caliphate saw a shift in leadership when the Umayyad dynasty took power in 661. The Umayyads moved the capital to Damascus, marking a period of stability and significant development in Palestine, including the construction of key Islamic structures like the Dome of the Rock and Al-Aqsa Mosque. However, internal conflicts, including the long-standing Qays-Yaman tribal feud, often led to local uprisings and instability. Despite attempts by later caliphs to control these feuds, they persisted throughout the period. The Abbasid Revolution in 750 saw the end of Umayyad rule, and with the capital moving to Baghdad, Palestine became more peripheral in the caliphate. Though the region continued to prosper, it was marked by rebellions and unrest. By the late 9th century, local rulers like Ahmad ibn Tulun declared independence, establishing the Tulunid dynasty, which brought a brief period of tolerance and development. However, following their decline, the Abbasids regained control until 939, when the Ikhshidid dynasty took over. This period was marked by religious persecution, particularly against Christians, with incidents like the torching of the Church of the Resurrection in 937. The Fatimids conquered Palestine in 969, marking the beginning of a prolonged period of warfare with various groups, including Byzantines, Sarmatians, and Bedouin tribes. Despite the violence, the Fatimids held precarious control over the region, but internal strife often undermined stability. Notably, Caliph al-Hakim's order to demolish churches, including the Church of the Holy Sepulchre in 1009, shocked Christian Europe, increasing tensions. By the 11th century, the Seljuk Turks' invasion brought further instability until the Fatimids briefly recaptured Jerusalem in 1098. The late 11th century also saw the onset of the Crusades, which were European Christian military campaigns aimed at reclaiming the Holy Land. The First Crusade captured much of the Levant, establishing the Kingdom of Jerusalem, which persisted despite ongoing conflicts. However, in 1187, the Ayyubid dynasty under Saladin reconquered most of Palestine, including Jerusalem, though subsequent crusades regained some coastal territories. The Ayyubids maintained a relatively tolerant policy, allowing Christian pilgrimages and restoring Muslim worship at key sites. In 1250, the Mamluks emerged as rulers in Egypt, and by 1260 they had repelled the Mongols from Palestine after the pivotal Battle of Ain Jalut. This marked a significant shift as the Mamluks sought to eliminate threats from the sea by destroying coastal infrastructure, which had long-term effects on the region's demographic and economic landscape. Under the Mamluks, Palestine was divided into administrative districts, and while they invested in infrastructure like roads and schools, the region was also marked by challenges like the Black Death and recurring conflicts. The Crusades gradually lost momentum as Europe shifted its focus, but the legacy of fortifications, religious orders, and pilgrimage routes remained in Palestine. Despite the ebb and flow of control, the region's strategic and religious importance continued to draw attention from empires and crusaders alike until the decline of the Crusader states in the late 13th century. In 1377, major cities in Palestine and Syria rebelled following the death of al-Ashraf Shaban. The uprising was suppressed, and in 1382, Barkik staged a coup in Cairo, founding the Burji Mamluk dynasty. During this period, Palestine was celebrated by Arab and Muslim writers as the blessed land of the prophets and Islam's revered leaders. Many sanctuaries were rediscovered, and received numerous pilgrims. In 1496, Mujir al-Din documented his history of Palestine. Hostilities erupted between the Mamluks and Ottoman Turks in 1486 over control of Western Asia. The Ottomans conquered Palestine after their 1516 victory over the Mamluks at the Battle of Marj Dabik. Their advance was swift, with minor battles fought in the Jordan Valley and Khan Yunis, and some uprisings in Gaza, Ramla, and Safad were quickly quelled. The Ottomans retained the administrative and political structures left by the Mamluks, integrating Greater Syria into an Ala province, ruled from Damascus. Palestine was divided into 5 sanjaks: Safad, Nablus, Jerusalem, Lajan, and Gaza, further subdivided into smaller districts called Nawahi. Throughout the 16th century, the Ottomans governed Damascus Ala centrally, with the Sublime Porte in Istanbul managing public order, tax collection, and economic, religious, and social affairs. During the early Ottoman rule, Palestine's population was around 200,000, with most people living in villages. Gaza, Safad, and Jerusalem were the largest cities, each with 5,000 to 6,000 residents. The Ottomans administered land through a system of timurs, fiefs, and waqufs, religious trusts. Timur lands, allocated to officers and officials, were sources of income and responsibility for law enforcement, while waquf lands supported religious, social, and welfare institutions. The name, Palestine, was no longer an official administrative unit under the Ottomans, but it remained in semi-official and popular use, as documented by jurists like Saif al-Islam Abu Sa'id Effendi and Kir al-Din al-Ramli. By the late 16th century, The Ottomans' control weakened due to internal revolts and the diminishing relevance of the Timur system. Consequently, new local elites emerged, including the Ridwan, Farrukh, and Jurabey families, who became influential rulers of various sanjaks in Palestine. Ties between these families were strengthened through marriage and cooperation, and they maintained a significant alliance, even holding the prestigious role of Emir al-Hajj, commander of the Hajj caravan. Their alliance dominated Palestine until the mid-17th century, when Ottoman attempts to centralize power led to the decline of these local dynasties. The Zaydani family became a formidable force in northern Palestine by the 18th century, with Zahir al-Umar consolidating control over the Galilee and establishing Acre as a fortified and economically thriving port. Zahir's rule attracted Jewish, Melkite, and Greek Orthodox Christian immigrants, revitalizing the economy. He formed an alliance with the Russians and Egyptian Ali Bey but was eventually defeated and killed by Ottoman forces in 1775. Jaza Pasha succeeded him, continuing Ottoman centralization efforts while maintaining some autonomy in Acre. In the 19th century, Acre's governors, such as Suleiman Pasha and Abdullah Pasha, maintained alliances with local sheikhs and confronted the Ottoman government's efforts to curb their influence. Abdullah's rule marked the end of local autonomy, as Palestine was brought under a single province, Sidon Ayalay, in 1830. Despite efforts to revive Acre's economic dominance, his reign was characterized by declining trade revenues and poverty. Throughout these centuries, political and military dynamics in Palestine were influenced by local families, external threats, and shifting Ottoman policies. The region experienced periods of local autonomy and economic prosperity, interrupted by efforts to reassert central authority, leading to social unrest and political reorganization. Starting in the 1830s, Aqil Agha, a Palestinian Bedouin, began to rise in influence in northern Palestine by forming a militant group. After a conflict with the Ottoman-appointed Kaymakam of Acre, Aqil sought allies in modern-day Jordan, aligning with Emir Fendi al-Fayez of the Bani Sakha tribe. With their support, Aqil conducted raids, leading to a pardon from the Ottomans and increased influence over the Galilee, resembling the autonomous rule of Zahir al-Umar. However, the Ottoman Tanzimat reforms of 1862 curtailed his autonomy, marking the end of local resistance to Ottoman centralization. Muhammad Ali of Egypt's campaign to annex Ottoman Syria in 1831 included reforms that sought to centralize and modernize administration. These reforms, however, were met with resistance, particularly from Palestinian peasants who opposed disarmament, conscription, and new taxation. This led to the Peasants' Revolt in 1834, primarily led by Qasim al-Ahmad of Jabal Nablus. Despite initial successes, the revolt was ultimately suppressed by Muhammad Ali's forces. In the aftermath, Egypt's control strengthened, and loyal local leaders like Hussein Abd al-Hadi were promoted, consolidating Egypt's centralized rule in the region until British intervention in 1841 restored Ottoman authority. Throughout the 19th century, Western influence in Palestine increased, facilitated by the legal system under the Ottoman Empire's capitulations, which allowed foreign powers to establish extraterritorial consular jurisdictions. This system created a state within a state, where Western nations enjoyed privileges and protections. During this period, the term Palestine became more commonly used to describe the region, although its precise boundaries varied. Ottoman administrative reforms divided the region into distinct units, further shaping its political landscape, and migration to areas like modern-day Jordan increased due to restored order and new opportunities. The late 19th century saw the rise of Zionism, which spurred waves of Jewish immigration to Palestine, aiming to establish a Jewish national home. Conflicts over land sales and immigration emerged, reflecting tensions between Zionist aspirations and existing Arab communities. The geopolitical situation was further complicated by World War I, leading to the British Mandate after the war. The Balfour Declaration of 1917 supported a Jewish homeland in Palestine, which contrasted with earlier promises of Arab independence. These agreements set the stage for future conflicts, as Britain assumed administrative control under the League of Nations, managing competing nationalistic claims in the region. Following the end of World War I, conflicting promises by Britain during the war led to tensions in Palestine. While the McMahon-Hussein correspondence implied Arab independence in exchange for support against the Ottomans, the Balfour Declaration endorsed a Jewish national home in Palestine. Many Arabs felt betrayed, prompting calls for unification with Syria. In February 1919, various Arab groups from Jaffa and Jerusalem met, supporting unity with Syria and opposing Zionism, which led to the First Palestinian National Congress. They authorized Faisal to represent them at the Paris Peace Conference, further highlighting their push for regional unity. The situation in Palestine grew more volatile, marked by the 1920 Palestine riots, a violent outbreak against Jews in Jerusalem fueled by rising tensions over Zionist immigration. The British military administration struggled to contain the violence, which lasted for 4 days and deepened mistrust among the British, Jews, and Arabs. As a result, the Jewish community began to establish a more autonomous infrastructure, focusing on self-defense and security. The 1920 San Remo Conference, held by the Allied Supreme Council, officially allocated the mandates for Palestine to the United Kingdom and Syria to France, though many details, including precise boundaries, remained unresolved. In July 1920, the French ousted Faisal from Damascus, ending his control over the broader region. This shift in power led local leaders in Transjordan, who had previously pledged allegiance to the Sharif of Mecca, to seek British administration to maintain stability. Herbert Samuel, the British High Commissioner for Palestine, proposed extending British control to Transjordan, and negotiations followed. These developments set the stage for the British Mandate in Palestine, which sought to balance competing national interests but struggled with conflicting promises and rising nationalist movements. The British Mandate's ambiguous stance on Jewish immigration and land sales, coupled with regional power dynamics, laid the groundwork for further tensions. The efforts to delineate boundaries and manage different nationalist aspirations reflected the complex geopolitical reality of the post-war Middle East. After World War II, Britain's hold over Palestine weakened due to the high costs of maintaining a large military presence amid a struggling post-war economy. By early 1947, Britain sought to end its mandate, requesting the United Nations, UN, to determine the region's future. The UN proposed a partition plan on 29 November 1947, recommending the creation of separate Jewish and Arab states, with a special international regime for Jerusalem. Jewish leaders accepted the plan, but Arab leaders rejected it, and the resolution triggered widespread sectarian violence. As the civil war escalated, the Yishuv, Jewish community, fought off attacks and gained the upper hand, resulting in the displacement of around 700,000 Palestinians, an event known as the Nakba. On 14 May 1948, David Ben-Gurion declared the establishment of the State of Israel, prompting neighboring Arab states to intervene, leading to the First Arab-Israeli War. Following Israel's declaration of independence, Arab armies from Egypt, Transjordan, Syria, and Iraq invaded, attempting to thwart the partition. The conflict resulted in intense fighting, particularly around Jerusalem, but a series of military operations allowed Israel to consolidate control over additional territory beyond the UN partitioned area. By early 1949, armistice agreements were signed, recognizing Israel's expanded borders. Jordan annexed the West Bank, while Gaza remained under Egyptian control, further entrenching the division of land originally allocated for a Palestinian state. The 1948 Arab-Israeli War fundamentally reshaped the region. Jordan's annexation of the West Bank included granting citizenship to its Palestinian residents, and the country was renamed the Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan. Meanwhile, The All-Palestine government was established in Gaza, but its influence was limited due to Egyptian control. Jordan's actions in the West Bank created tensions with other Arab states, while an alleged secret agreement between King Abdullah of Jordan and Israel suggested collusion to divide the territory. The Six-Day War in 1967 marked a new phase, with Israel capturing the West Bank, Gaza Strip, Sinai Peninsula, and Golan Heights. This shift led to Israeli military occupation of these territories, prompting the UN Security Council to pass Resolution 242, advocating a «land for peace» approach. By 2013, a majority of UN member states recognized the State of Palestine, reflecting growing global support for Palestinian statehood.